Hello and welcome to my channel. If you are here, then you probably know who I am, and if not, and you just happen to see my face pop up on your related videos, then you're probably an avid reader and my books may or may not appeal to you. Either way, this is my channel, you are here, and I am Haley Inez. Okay, welcome back. As I said before, I am Haley Inez and this is my YouTube channel. I decided to start this after I did a really big poll and everybody kind of said that they wanted stuff that were like insights to my writing, like character bios, how I come up with plots, how I get through my novels, like what I'm doing next, even like questions about like my personal life. And so I thought, oh my gosh, this is like stuff for a YouTube channel. And then, here I am. I am the author of the Blood King series, the Pet series, the Deadly Vows series, and much more to come, and much more that I haven't listed here. All this to say, I am a dark romance author. Dark romance is something that is not for the faint of heart. It's not for everyone, and honestly, a lot of people get offended that it exists, but it is a genre that pushes boundaries, and I honestly fell in love with it at kind of a young age. I don't want to like say out loud because I get mad at like when I get little younger kids on my profile. I'm like, don't read this. But I was pretty young when I kind of discovered it, and I kept it a secret most of my life because I was like, oh, this is so shameful and my family will shun me and my friends will think I'm weird. But then I kind of just got into this groove of writing it, and now I just love it as its own entity. Disclaimer, just because I say I love the genre doesn't mean I condone what happens in the books, okay? I just want to clarify that because I literally have people yelling at me, so many times a day because they come across certain scenes in my books even after reading the content warning and get very upset at some of the content, but that's neither here nor there. So who am I behind this exterior where I write about things that make people uncomfortable? I grew up in a very small town in East Texas. My graduating class was like 80 people. I moved out to the city a couple of years ago because I wanted more opportunities, and honestly, I did find them here, so I don't regret moving. It was a shock to everyone when the knowledge that I am an author popped out. No one really expected that from me at all because I'd always been kind of quiet, and I literally played sports and did cheer and did dance, and never did it cross anyone's mind that I wrote novels. I started writing in 4th grade with everybody else because we were all literally learning how to write an essay for the tax test. And I think I took to it more than my classmates. I was obsessed with the idea of hook words and hook paragraphs and adjectives and everything that went into making this wonderful story. Not only could I create this fictional story and sell it to adults and get the highest score on it, I loved doing it. And so that kind of began my writing journey. Before that, I had always read. I read like crazy. Honestly, a lot of the books that I read as a child when I grew up and now that I'm like older, I literally have bought all of them. And one day I will go through and do that with you guys and go through all of my childhood novels. But today I'm just telling you about myself. So although I fell in love with writing very young, it was something that was a hobby to me. It wasn't pushed in my house. I grew up in a very strict household. We were very sports oriented, music, reading was not something that was even allowed because my dad was so strict religious wise. I had to read 3 chapters out of the Bible for every 1 chapter out of a regular book that I could read. And on top of that, my father literally censored everything if he caught me he was the person, my father was the person who judged a book by its cover. So if he saw a book in my hands and it looked sketchy to him at all, he would take it from me and rip it up or burn it. That being said, writing was definitely a secret in my life. It was like my little secret. And honestly, reading some of the novels that I did, like the Krenar series by Anna Zires and the Monster in His Eyes series by J.M. Darhauer, those were like literally my horrible secrets that I would keep just locked away under in a shoebox under tufts of everything else so nobody would find it, because I was so mortified that I was drawn to this kind of this genre, this whole world that existed. Back to writing. It wasn't until like 10th grade that I ever even decided to put my stuff out there. I discovered this app called Wattpad, and I saw all these free novels on them, and I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. And there was just like so much content that I could read. And then I realized that this was people uploading their own stories. And so I took it upon myself, and I was like, I can do this too. And I wrote my first novel, Loving You. If you guys have been here since like the original days, like if you've been here since I went by Haley Stewart instead of Haley Inez, you know that Loving You is my first ever novel. And yeah, I wrote that when I was like 15, 16. And regardless of the plot holes and the grammar and the cringy dialogue, people loved it. People took to it. And honestly, some people, even now, because I put the novel on my Patreon for people to read, people literally will still go and ignore all of that and read it because they genuinely just enjoy the idea of the story. And then I decided that I wanted to jump on the Mafia train. At the time, when I was sharing my novels, Mafia was like the big thing. You know, we went through the Twilight, vampire, werewolf era, and everybody was writing those books. I was the Mafia boss, like, era. So I jumped on the train and I wrote my first series, which was Deadly Vows. And I love Deadly Vows. It was my first ever series that I began. Pet was my first series that I completed. Deadly Vows was my first series that I was like, I can write more than one book at a time. But once again, I was 17 when I wrote the book, and the publisher that I used, I had a very bad experience with them. They literally mangled my book. They changed the tense of the novel. They did so much that I asked them not to, and during COVID, the book blew up. And guys, if I give you any advice as an author, do not read the reviews. Don't read the 1-star reviews. It was so embarrassing. It was so bad. And I was like, guys, but I was like 17. Like, I'm a different writer now, blah, blah, blah. And people just weren't getting that, and they weren't like understanding that. And they were literally like dragging me with all of the reviews, and there weren't only bad reviews. There were like a lot of great reviews. A lot of people really enjoyed it, but just the negative reviews were very cruel. So we've covered why I love dark romance. We've covered how I got into writing, but we have not covered where my niche came from. My niche is fantasy romance, guys. I love fantasy romance. I love fantasy novels. I love it all. I love beings that have insane powers. I love being able to world build. I love creating cultures. I love creating characters that have different like physiques to them because they belong to a specific group. Like, I love it all. And honestly, I think I discovered that a couple years ago when I decided to start writing Pet. Pet was my first step into world building. I'd never done it before. Writing about people and writing about this entire fantasy realm that exists are completely just like different. If anyone ever tries to tell you otherwise, they're wrong. You have to not only keep up with personalities and traits and different types of things that you would from like a normal novel, you have to keep up with these insane characteristics that you've created, these cultures and customs that you've created, and you have to make them fit with everything. You have to come up with like, why is it realistic? Why are these two characters even, interacting with each other? And I say that, but I love doing it. That's why I've literally like created 2 separate worlds. The Pet series has to do with like aliens and stuff, but it still has to do with like sci-fi world building. And then, the Blood King series has to do with more like Earth-like fantasies, which things we are all kind of familiar with, except for the Ichnery. That was something that I personally created myself. And I have to attribute everything that I'm about to tell you to Anna Zires. She wrote the Twist Me series, she wrote the Krynar series. The Krynar series is literally what put me on even thinking about writing about like sci-fi. I never thought about an alien race coming to like Earth and not being hostile. But she wrote this insane novel about this guy who freaking is like an alien. He comes to Earth. They like, they came peacefully, and he kind of falls in love with like humans. She wrote this entire series about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's not like some freaking like Martian crap or whatever. It's like literally this humanoid species that, and they had like a relationship, and it was crazy to me. And I was like, holy freaking crap, I'm gonna do it. And so I did. And I say Anna Zires because she literally introduced me to the world of like dark romance. When she started, her books were like dark romance. I was like, ooh, what is that? And her Twist Me series is crazy. It's literally everything you could ask for in like a psycho captive novel slash falling in love, but being super controlling. And I know that's like super touchy subject in this day and age, but it was my cup of tea. I loved it. So if you're looking for something to read, gonna just toss that in there. Go read the Twist Me series. But back to my original point, because I'm getting sidetracked. So she wrote this novel about, aliens coming in peace, and that kind of like drew my attention because I was like, I saw a novel that had aliens in it that weren't, these weird predators, sharp teeth, no eyeball, or like fighting blah 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 type thing. And so I thought, oh my gosh, like I can write a sci-fi dark romance novel. And I created this amazing being. I was like, what if a limitless being came to Earth and his only weakness is the thing he hates the most in the world? And then it's just kind of like, how do you get that to happen? How do you get those two storylines to come together? How do you get those people to interact to where that makes sense? And that's kind of how the Pet series was born. That's how I jumped into fantasy. And now fantasy is where I live. I'm constantly coming up with ideas on how to either create more culture-driven characters and different things like that. Like, fantasy is where I live as an author. So final remarks. I hope that I explained enough about myself that y'all are excited to go on this journey, as excited as I am to be on it with you. I can't wait to grow with y'all, explore with y'all, and not just with my writing, but with everything else that I'm gonna offer on this platform. So everyone, please like and subscribe to my channel. Make sure you're following me on my Instagram, and make sure you're also following me on Wattpad. And finally, make sure you're following me on Patreon. You don't have to join, but if you want early access to novels that haven't been released yet, access to original manuscripts, access to the entire Deadly Vows series, then you could definitely join Patreon. The link for everything will be in the description below. Thanks, guys, and have a great rest of your day.